There are several smoke jump bases around this western region. Missoula offers, like I said, a good tour. McCall, Idaho is another one that's pretty impressive. As we travel through here, the vegetation is rather sparse as far as variety goes. The long needle ponderosa pine, the short needle Douglas fir, those are the two principal coniferous trees. And there's Philadelphia's mock orange, there's wild rose, there's water hemlock, there's arrowleaf balsam roots, there's noxious weed, canyon, yeah. And there's a very unique plant, locally known as Calcea's moss. July 4th, 1888, Reverend Francis Duncan Kelsey, who was also not just a minister, but also a college professor of botany, came through this canyon. And he saw a unique plant growing that he wasn't familiar with. He studied it, he sketched it, he tried to key it out, and it would be named for him, called Calcea's moss. Some good examples coming into view here on the left, but it grows all over the canyon. I describe it as my favorite uncooked vegetable growing on the limestone. Doesn't that green lumpy thing look like broccoli to you? Well, a couple of years after this was so named, Calcea's moss, the tour boat got out earlier than usual in the spring of the year, and they found this Calcea's moss in full bloom. Well, it cannot be a moss if it has a vascular system that allows for a blossom. So more study was conducted. And what you have there is a very, very rare and unusual member of the rose family. Calcea uniflora is its politically correct name. Calcea's moss is what it's commonly called. And I slide over here to show you some on the right side. There's a mule deer hiding in the trees right in front of me. Meriwether Lewis gave these deer the name mule deer because of the big ears. Reminded him of the mules back on the plantation. It's buried in the brush, but it's looking at us now. It looks like a doe, a female deer. And there's a little ray, a golden drop of sun above.
Oh, yeah, she's laying there.
Eating some of the choke cherries. And as we slide forward in this rock face ahead of us on the right, some good examples of Calcea uniflora, or Calcea's moss. And you'll see all kinds of lichen. That's that rust-colored burnt orange material. That's one of the oldest organisms on the face of the earth. It's actually a combination of fungi and algae that symbiotically exist to create lichen. Left side of the river, the pictographs again. The Reverend Kelsey is a namesake of our local Native Plant Society, the Kelsey chapter. The newsletter they put out is the Calcea. His lifelong collection of plants, some are housed at Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana, where he worked some early in his history, and the majority of his life with his plant collection at the University of Miami, Ohio. Now, as we head back upriver, you'll get a different perspective of some of the drainages we passed earlier. Coming into view ahead of us on the left, you'll see Meriwether Canyon, and you'll see some of the scars from the 2000 fire. And then a mile further will be Coulter Campground, and then beyond that another mile will be Fieldstone. But as we head back upriver, what I'm going to do right now is cue up the CD player and play a tune for you about the Man Gulch Fire called Cold Missouri Water. James Keelighan is the artist that sings this tune. And it tells the story of Wagner Dodd. Remember, he was the foreman that lit the escape fire, as we call it now. He survived without serious injury. And even though he survived the Man Gulch tragedy, I suspect he died 1,000 deaths because of the loss of 13 of his crew members on his watch. But he would die eventually, several years later. later after the incident at Van Gogh from the insert. So in this tune, Cold Missouri Water, he's on his hospital bed, and he offers some comment about the Van Gogh incident. Now, for those of you sitting out on the back deck, our all-weather speakers have suffered the last 4 years from all the weather, and there's a little distortion. You'll hear the tune, but it's not going to be as clear on the CD part as it would be inside. So Cold Missouri Water by KSP.
There's a notes right there. See it?
My baby dog, didn't go that. It's written on the chart there in the bed. The day comes by, I can't read it. I've read every word, every sentence there. It's all confession, not the reason that you came. Get it off my chest, or I check out again. Since you mentioned it, well, there's 13 things on me. 13 crosses my blood, August 49, North Montana. The hottest day on record and the forest in the drive. I think skyline in the mountains. I was crew chief at the jump base out there in Boys Fly. Pick the drop zone, C-47 come and go. Feel the tap on your leg until you go. See the circle of the fire down below. Big need of us drop of cold Missouri water. Cage of fire, I've seen bigger. So I ordered them to Side Hill, they fight it from below. We have our backs to the river. We'd have it late by morning, even if things get slow. But the fire ground jumped the valley just ahead. There was no way down. Headed for the ridge instead of 2 feet to fight it. We'd have to fight that slow instead. Flames 1 step behind above the cold Missouri water. The sky had turned red. Smoke was boiling. 200 yards to safety, death was 50 yards behind. I don't know why, I just called it. I struck a match to waste my grass, running out of time. Tried to tell them, step into this fire. I said, we can't make it. This is the only chance you get. But they cursed me, ran for the rocks above instead. I lay face down and prayed above the cold Missouri water.
children never married. In their senior years, finding the demands of maintaining the ranch much too great, with no family, immediate family to pass it on to, they found it necessary to put their ranch up for sale. Now, about this time, late 1970s, early 80s, a lot of development was going on across the country. The person that owned the area across from the marina, American Bar, that person sold it, new order immediately, and started subdividing homes together. And the Hilgers were fearful that if they sold their property, the very same thing could happen. They didn't want to see homes, cabins, and subdevelopments appearing on their property or ranch along the river, so they placed it all into conservation easement protection. So that means for perpetuity, this land on the right, the privately owned land, never be used for anything but agricultural purposes. No homes, no subdividing, nothing of that sort can ever be built on the right. And on the left, the wilderness designation, well, we know how that protects the land. So young children that come on board today, this summer, they can travel through here in the future with their grandchildren and see the same canyon we've seen today. And I suspect Meriwether Lewis would still recognize them then as well. Forever protected. Now ahead of us on the left, Sacagawea, the mix of young kids and American white pelican flying overhead. Kids from a local program in our community and some public folks. But when you see the boat, look above it, straight above it to where the limestone cliffs begin. First group of trees ends the limestone cliff that runs parallel to the river. You'll see a rather symmetrical hole in the wall. Using your imagination, look to the right of that hole in the wall. There's a pinnacle of rock that juts up. That's what we call the eye of the rhino. The hole is the eye, the pinnacle is the horn. There's an osprey nest on that horn of the rhino. And all kinds of lichen on that formation. Really covered in lichen. Underneath the eye, there's a band of lichen. I used to call that eyeshadow, eye makeup, and say that must be a female rhinoceros as a result. But anymore, that doesn't identify gender, so that's just a rhino. Now, the last of the four Hilger grandchildren to pass away was Brian. The ranch had been sold, arrangements were made that he had a place that he stayed on the ranch, and each day that the marina was open, one of the employees would pick him up, bring him down, and he brought down that antique oak table and chair that sits in the tour center across from the window there where you purchase your ticket. On the back wall behind the table, there hangs his wool coat and his cowboy hat. But he would sit there, visit with passengers. He was a very quiet man, but if you asked him questions, he would get started about the Hilger history in this canyon. One of the things he'd talk about if he were here today is how the Hilgers, their family, had all kinds of names for these mountains and drainages and creeks and whatnot. But when they were being developed and mapped by the cartographers, they never once asked, what do you call this place? At the head of Coulter Canyon, coming into view in a moment, is a mountain on the maps. It's called Cap Mountain, C-A-P. It's got a button on top, just like my ball cap. And Hilger said, that's a great name for that mountain, but our family had a good name as well. So when it comes into view here in just a second, I'll turn so everybody can see it, and I'll share with you the Hilger name for what is called Cap Mountain today. There's Cap Mountain, off to the left, the head of that drainage, and that's what the Hilgers used to call May West Mountain. Now, being the youthful person that I am, May West, not an individual I knew anything about, so I had to do some research. And she was as pure as the fallen snow until she drifted. more comments regarding the Gilgers. Started the tours 129 years ago. They sold the tour business in 1950s. The person that operated it then basically gave it to a newly created foundation in the early 70s called the Gason Mountains Foundation, of which the Gason Mountains Boat Club we are part of. The foundation promotes conservation, education, and recreation. Some of the proceeds from ticket sales like yours today, well, they go to the Montana Land Alliance. There's a small donation made each year to that organization to help with conservation easements across the state. The Educational Foundation is part of it. All the fourth graders in the Helena schools study Montana history, and the principals of those schools can arrange for a tour either in the fall or the spring of the year. Come out, build a boat, 104 fourth graders. They're always welcome to come along and help if you're looking for excitement. And we give them a tour through here, give them living color Montana history, and there's no charge for it. Now the tours run from Memorial Day weekend. Now, around this year, it's September 21st is the closing date. Remember, we have to have everything out by the first part of October because of the threat of freeze-up. When I'm not giving tours, they're done. I'm not sure what I'll do this winter, but for the past 38 years, I just retired in June of this year. I worked in Helena as an animal behaviorist for 38 years. In other words, folks, I was a middle school teacher for 38 years. What they call a wine behavior. But when we get to the mouth of the canyon, I'll give you a little more history as we head into the marina and conclude our travels. And the next few minutes, I'll give the mic to Tom and then he can give you an overview of the roads and all the
anybody, but mostly seniors. And we are on a trek going from St. Louis all the way to the Pacific Ocean, following Lewis and Clark. The flag I'm flying back there, 15 stars and 15 stripes, which was the flag of the time, 1804, etc. It is also the flag, or the design of the flag, which became known as the Star Spangled Banner. 15 stars and 15 stripes. Now, the beads. Well, what was the trade item of Lewis and Clark with the Indians? Beads. And somebody even said blue beads, because they know that. So, I am the historian on the bus, and whenever somebody does something to enhance the crowd, keep us happy, make us laugh, or anything like that, they get a little reward. And so I like to do that. We got some young people here, so I'll pass out a few beads. Thank you very much.
tried the trapping yet, but we've got traps in camp just in case.
Are you camped out now, or just?
No, I wish we were. We didn't bring our tent with us this year, but we like to go to rendezvous all the time. We've got one coming up at the end of the month back home in Kansas. So we're doing reenactments probably 8 months out of the year.
Oh yeah.
So we like to go to one called Frozen Butt.
Where's that one?
That's in northern Kansas, and it's in February, first weekend in February.
You ever go to Riverton, Wyoming?
I've seen it advertised, but I haven't. We haven't made it up there.
That's an original rendezvous center there.
Yes, it is. There's another one at Fort Laramie, Wyoming. That one I camped at about 3 years ago. I won first place at the black powder shoot.
That's cool.
So we shoot black powder.
Yeah.
We do primitive bow,
Right.
and we throw hawk and knife.
Oh yeah.
So she has a buckskin dress. I have buckskins that I wear. We do that all the time. Of course, any kids come along, we try to school them so they can learn something.
Yeah. Right.
But you'll be surprised how many people don't know what the original Star Spangled Banner is.
Right. That's true.
So Mom and Dad here bought it for me for
Oh, good.
Christmas present a few years ago, and now we fly that every time we camp out.